Years ago, one of my employer's clients decided to set up a new office in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I got chosen to spend 3 weeks there, setting up the new space. Also chosen for the job was a guy from another division in Chicago. His name was Dave. Now, I've never worked with Dave before, but from the start, I didn't like him much. He was never less than 15 minutes late, and he lumbered around like a zombie. I caught him dozing off more than a few times during the first week on site. Still, he was the closest thing that I had to a friend in Fort Wayne, so I invited him to the bar on Friday night for an all the company funded booze you can drink. But he said,
"I wish. I'm going home to pass out until Monday. The commute is killing me."
Wait, what? It seems Dave's boss was a jerk. Instead of paying for a plane ticket, a hotel, or a rental car, like my boss had, he instructed Dave to drive from Chicago, almost 3 hours away. Dude, that is like totally no bueno. 6 hours a day driving?
Yeah, it sucks.
Still, it'll be killer money, right? That's like 70 hours this week. Jeez. Make sure you put in your gas and tolls. The last time I had to get reimbursed for expenses, it took them over a month. I can see the little light in Dave's eyes that was left faded away.
They're not paying me for any of that.
Hearing that, I put in a call to my boss, who was puzzled, as was I. If he worked for our division, he would be paid his drive time, and expenses at least. We were both pretty sure that it was corporate, and not something individual divisions could choose to disobey. Unfortunately, neither I or my boss had any say in the matter, and neither of us was familiar with Illinois or Indiana labor law. So all we could do was advise David to save his receipts, so he can give them to IRS and complain to HR. On Monday, Dave was late again. After an hour, I was worried, so I called his cell phone.
"I just passed Portage. Making pretty good time, all things considered. I should be there in 2 hours.
Dave seemed perfectly happy about it, so I figured that he was required to stop by his office before heading out. "Okay, Dave, I'll see you then." When Dave arrived around 11, his first thing he did was take a 15-minute break. Long drive, I understand. There was still most of the day ahead of us, and after the break, Dave finally got down to business, finally booting up his computer. He had barely logged in when he stood up and announced he was taking his lunch. Okay, something's going on, but I haven't the foggiest idea what. After lunch, Dave finally got around to some work, putting in a good 20 minutes, reading emails, before stopping by to see me.
"I'm gonna take my 15 minutes now, then I'm heading home."
What? Dave's grinning like a nut.
"Don't worry, I spoke to HR over the weekend."
I didn't see Dave on Tuesday. His cell phone was going unanswered. Neither my boss or I had any luck trying to find out why. We didn't try hard. Not our zoo, not our monkey. Ditto on Wednesday, but whatever. He probably was just sick. Then Thursday, I see Dave before work at a hotel breakfast buffet. "Dave, we were getting worried about you, especially since you were a no-show the last 2 days. He piled up his plates, laughing a little. He told me a story.
Oh man, this was great.
He went on to tell me about how his client noticed he was coming in late and doing no work, leaving early, and he called the company to complain. Dave, in turn, was called into a disciplinary meeting with his boss and with the local HR, who were prepared to terminate him for putting in 32 hours of unearned overtime on the previous week and not working at all the day before. Dave said,
"Oh, and they were serious too. One of the guys from security delivered a box containing my personal effects from the desk. Oh, but I had the ace in the hole. 3 as a matter of fact."
Then he went on to tell me about how he had an email from his boss instructing him to drive to Fort Wayne every day at his own expense as a change in work location. An email from corporate HR telling him that while he wasn't required to work overtime, he was required to report his overtime worked, including driving to and from clients. 2, he had a page from the division's employee manual. And 3, which covered paid breaks off-site. He then informed them that he was wasn't going to work any more overtime. After 3 hours driving in, an hour and a half of breaks, and 3 hours home left him with only half an hour to do some actual work. Less, actually, if the traffic was bad. Oh, and that corporate HR was willing to stand behind him, cause he's spoken to them before the meeting.
It took them about 3 seconds to realize they were screwed. And well, here I am, back in action. And since everything was booked last minute, I'm in a suite with a jacuzzi. And my rental is a Cadillac.
For context, my family and I recently moved into a rental house because our new house is being built. The rental is in the back of a gated community on a mostly undeveloped street. Yesterday, I received a letter from the Homeowners Association informing me that I'm not in compliance with a strictly enforced by towing restriction, stating that the vehicle may not be parked in the street overnight. In the letter was a picture of my project car, an old BMW, parked beside our house on the street. I decided to look up the HOA's restrictions, which I haven't seen before since I'm a renter, and discovered I'm living in an HOA hell. The street parking rules is just the beginning of a long list of restrictions, including one warranting a hefty fine for leaving the garage door open when not in use. This came as a huge surprise, since several of my neighbors had parked their cars in the street without problems since I lived there, so I assumed it was okay. I can only imagine that they singled me out because my car is 30 years old. However, in my defense, it's very presentable and by no means junky. Being singled out made me incredibly frustrated, to the point that I did some legal research. It turns out that my homeowner association has every right to tow my car since it's parked on a private street. The good news for me is that the street just outside the neighborhood is public, and it's 100% legal to park on it for any amount of time. Unfortunate for the homeowner association, the closest section of public street to my rental house is right in front of the nice gated entrance. Ironically, my old BMW has now become part of their image, and there's nothing they can do about it. Not until I move out. I work for a small company, and I'm the head of the IT department, aka the only IT person. Truthfully, the gig is pretty good. Good pay, benefits, and I can come and go as I please within reason. The two people I have to answer to is the vice president and the CEO, and as par for the course, they know nothing about what I do or about technology in general, and they leave me be since I'm good at my job and everything runs smoothly. Being a small company, a lot of us don't take vacations due to 1, building the company, 2, not having replacements for the time, so I've gone 2 years without vacation. My wife convinces me that I need to use time to decompress and take a small 1-week getaway. I talk to the VP, he gives me a thumbs up, and I could take the time barring that I get everything in order and do some minor teaching of the other staff just in case of emergency. That's cool. That's easy. Enter the Field Operation Director, the FOD. The guy is an attack dog for the Vice President, as for no reason, as the Vice President is nothing but polite and reasonable. The FOD loves giving everyone a hard time, adding steps to task, that way he can make himself look like he's part of the process, reminding everyone how much of a boss he is to the rest of us in management, and he likes to call me a nerd every chance he gets. Fair to say, I dislike the FOD immensely. After making my rounds with the other staff, it's the FOD's time to do some scary computer-related learning. The FOD refuses to look weak under any circumstances and gets very aggressive when learning new things because I'm the boss, I already know. In the midst of learning, it dawns on him, and he asked why he was learning this stuff anyway. I'm the nerd, and it's my job to do this, right? I clue him in on the week I'm taking off, and this stuff is just precautionary. This worries FOD, as he'll have to retain information, answer questions, and do some minor troubleshooting. The conversation went something like this.
Who approved your vacation?
The Vice President did, as long as I can get you guys comfortable with some small maintenance.
I only approve vacation time. I'm your boss.
Side note, He does this so much that the vice president actually wrote out a hierarchy chart, and we all carry a digital copy so we can remind him who's actually in charge.
You're not.
And I show him the chart.
Well, fine, but your salary, so you have to do work on your vacation. You'll bring your laptop and work phone with you.
When you vacation, you make it clear that you're unreachable and that you can't be bothered even in an emergency.
That's because I go to places without service, and unless you're going to a place like mountains, you have to work. Your salary.
Malicious compliance initiated. Just to be clear, if I go to a place without service, I won't be expected to work, yeah?
That's right, but you're a nerd, and you don't do anything outdoorsy.
Great, thanks for clearing that up. Fast forward 3 weeks later, and it's my vacation time. All my ducks are in a row. People are comfortable with me being gone for a week, and are all encouraging me to just disconnect. A close coworker of mine knows of my conversation with FOD, and I shared my easy and effective plan. 1. Wife and I rented a cabin in the woods, 2 hours from the nearest town, that doesn't have service. Number 2. Set up automatic email replies, and have all IT questions and concerns forwarded to FOD, since he's the boss and he knows. And 3, leave my work phone on the charger in my office with the ringer on. Lock the door so he has to hear it, and voicemail changed to have FOD become the IT for the week. The coworker loves the idea of flooding FOD with questions that he can't answer, so much so that he gets the other coworkers into it. Midway through the week, I get a call from the coworker with an update. FOD loses it. He can't keep up with any of the requests. He didn't bother to memorize the simple test that I showed him, and he does what any good boss does, and he puts in a request for vacation until I get back. Retreat is always an option. Nothing screams leader more than retreat. It's not weakness and failure if you're not there. My coworkers were able to manage, and the FOD got his 3-day vacation, unfortunately. After the week off, I'm called to the VP's office to catch up and get things back on track. The vice president obviously heard of the hardships of FOD, and he laughed at my malicious compliance surprisingly. The vice president struck a deal with me moving forward, since it was made clear that I was the only one who knew my job. I can go on vacation whenever I want, as long as I bring my laptop, a phone, and check it once a week. They refund my vacation time if I work more than 5 minutes. I took it, but with the caveat that the FOD actually learned some of the duties, just in case. The vice president agreed. Now I do an hour of teaching each week with the very surly FOD. After all, he's the boss and he's gotta know. For context, I live in Europe. I've always been a language nerd, and since my parents' divorce, English and everything in it, music, movies, internet, was my escape. So I was fluent before most of my classmates, and I got my certificate of proficiency in English, and the highest certificate from the Cambridge Council at 18 years old. In my country, high schools are basically undergrad college, and are finished between ages 19 and 20. And the problem which almost all public schools have is a terrible language teacher, most of them being former Russian teachers with minimal English or any other language education. Also, as my country is small and nobody could reasonably expect us to use our language abroad, we put a huge emphasis on language studies at all levels of education, and it is often the thing that most schools boast about to become more prestigious. So enough context. From early on, my last high school English teacher and I kicked it off to a bad start. The first test she gave us came back with all red because of words which are not in the textbook. The terrible teacher, or TT for short, would do this to me the full final 2 years. She would take my essays and test and cross out any word, phrase, or structure which was not in the textbook we were using. I maintain that I will not go as far to learn the textbook vocabulary by heart, just to remember which synonym I was allowed to use, just because of TT's antics. I had managed to keep straight A's for 3 terms because there was nothing she could do to mark down on my grammar. The final term, however, TT learned that I wished to go to university, which was a specialization that her daughter failed to be accepted to. She told me that as an explanation as to why I could not hope to be accepted, and which, among dozens of other things, they required good or perfect marks from high school language lessons, and they only accepted 5% of applicants. TT was dead set on making me fail. She started giving me the stupidest assignments and extra tests for misbehaving in class, which included being finished early and silently staring at the wall. She required me to mark the exact position of Disneyland on this blind map of the US, and more of the same crap. You could tell she was so satisfied by me failing these tests, she would have a grin on her face each time handing out the results. By this time, I had been representing the school in Language Olympics for both English and Spanish. She had no idea because it was organized by another language teacher, and even though the principal made it a big deal, TT was plainly uninterested. I had placed 3rd in the capital city district in Spanish and 6th nationwide in English. Not to be listing this as a brag. Okay, maybe a bit. But to use it later, by the end of the term, she got my marks down to a C-. Mind you, all the grammars were still A's, but her blind maps and tourist attractions had taken their toll. I went to reason with her, but her reaction was, "If you think a different teacher would propose a different mark, take all of your documents and go to one of my colleagues. But I believe it's clear to anyone that you do not deserve any better." So I did. I took all of my documents, including the blind maps, the grammar test, and then my year-old PCE certification and the 6th place diploma. I went to the teacher who organized the competitions, and I explained the situation. She was furious. She took this to the principal, and even though I was waiting outside, I could hear him yelling at TT.
"You're trying to fail the student who is representing us on the national level of competitions?"
It also turned out that the CPE I had, by that time, was a higher level of English education that the terrible teacher had. I got my A, and I got accepted to the university, and I loved it there. I also started my own tiny language school, where, of course, teaching the language to whoever was interested. I helped kids whose language teachers are incompetent and or power-hungry morons. Here's some background. Part of my job involves taking calls from the public to offer various types of support. This can range from technical support to helping people find services in their country. My team is me and one other person. Between us, we cover from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. on Mondays through Fridays and weekends as well. Because of this, and the fact that the company won't invest in call waiting for us, we can only take one call at a time. Our voicemail quite clearly states that we're a small team, but if you leave your name and number, we aim to get back with you within 5 minutes. Normally, people are rather understanding of our situation and are happy to wait for us to call them back. But, as the world is full of impatient a-holes, we often get voicemails just criticizing us. Now, this happened recently, and I've been waiting to react this way for a long time, and I finally got the opportunity to. Here was the voicemail.
"This is ridiculous. I was told to call this number, but what's the f***ing point in telling people to call if no one's here to answer the phone?"
Then he calls again. "Hello, you're through with the company. Crack Bear speaking. How can I help you?"
"Oh, so now you answer the phone. What's the point in having a number if you never bloody answer it?"
Did you leave a voicemail? I just listened to it, but unfortunately, you didn't leave your contact information, and I was unable to return your call. Thank you for calling back. Can I help you?"
"You should answer every call that comes in, though."
Well, unfortunately, there's only 2 people in our team, including myself, and there tends to only be one of us in at a time, so if I answer every call, I end up having to keep people on hold, and that really doesn't seem fair. Regardless, though, you're through at the moment. I'd be happy to help you however I can.
"You can help me by doing your job and answering the phone when it rings."
At this point, I'm like, screw you, so sod it, I'll comply. Then I say, "Okay, sure, I'm sorry that I've annoyed you. I'll make sure to answer the phone whenever it rings. Now, how can I help you?" They start to describe their problem. The phone rings. "Oh, I'm sorry, the phone is ringing. I have to place you on hold."
Wait!
Then I place them on hold. Then I help the person calling, taking my sweet, sweet time, like going above and beyond just to keep them on hold. Plus, it's nice to help people. Then I take them off hold. Thanks for your patience. Now, you were saying?
How dare you put me on hold, especially...
Oh, I'm sorry. The phone is ringing. I'll have to place you on hold. Then I put them on hold. You can see where this is going. I think I managed to keep this going for about 15-20 minutes before they finally hung up. Thank you very much for listening. I want to give a big thank you to the Redditors who shared their stories. Also, shout out to my patrons. I appreciate your support. If you want to become a patron, for just $1 a month, you can get advanced audio broadcast that you can download and listen to wherever you want. And later on this week, we've got Sir Sam coming up. So I look forward to having that out and ready for you. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening, and remember, have fun with your failures, or they'll have fun with you.